Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Can you hear me? Okay, good. This is our class number 3 or 4. I think this is 4, right? It's number 3, yes. Oh, okay, okay, good. Okay. So, what is it that we're having today? We're, like we said, I just want to make sure that the mic is working. If you can hear me well, type 1. Okay, if you can see me now, please type 1. Okay, good. So how many are we now? We're 18, right? So we're expecting more as we proceed. Oh, okay, no problem. I'm sharing also something with you. I'm hopeful that you can see that on the screen. No, you cannot. Okay, wait. Okay, I guess I have to go with this here so that you can see. So can you see now? Okay, good. Nice. So what we have today, it's chapter 2, William Shakespeare, Othello, Honesty and Difference, Men and Women, right? And this happens to be chapter 2 in your book, okay, the textbook. So by now, I trust that you guys have finished reading the play, right? Othello, right? Who, I think, who hasn't? I mean, I think everyone has read the play. We've been talking about it for quite some time now, right? Okay. And like we agreed, we read the play against the age, against the prevailing ideas and values of the age. Chief among them would be the idea of established order, the idea of hierarchies, the fact that you have to observe and stick to these hierarchies, the idea of class fixity, the idea of keeping to your race, right? It's a big chain of being, and you're destined to have a place on the chain, high or low. Okay? So the question is not whether to have a place, because you will have a place. The question is about whether you are allowed to challenge your place on the chain or not. And obviously the answer is no, you are not allowed. You cannot challenge your place on the chain. If you're low born, if you are born into or in or at the bottom of the chain, poor, black, for example, in terms of race, so you will have to stick to your place. And what happens if you try to think otherwise, act otherwise? Perhaps you're ambitious, you're poor, and you want to kind of improve your uh, life. You try to climb the social ladder. Is that acceptable? No, they wouldn't allow you. By doing this, you are a transgressor, more or less. Transgression is when you violate the norms, social, political, or racial. Okay? So when you read the play or watch it, and you see Othello, who is obviously at the bottom of the chain due to the fact that he is black, and he tries to climb up the ladder, okay, and he mixes with whites and then gets married to one of those whites. Obviously, he is violating the norms. He is going against the established order. Okay? So should people allow him to do so? Obviously, no. Okay? Agents in society, in the manner of Iago and others and Propencio, are going to contrive and plot against him. They represent their white societies. Okay? Aside from their own personal reasons, right? Especially with Iago. So Iago has personal reasons, and he also has objective societal reasons. You can think of Iago as an agent or a representation of the white society. Okay? He is a tool that is meant to bring about the downfall of Black Othello at the end. Again, he is an element of retribution, if you like. Retribution means punishment. Okay? Meant to bring about the tragic downfall of Othello. Okay? But this seems to be the message that Shakespeare is hitting and is getting across to us every now and then. Right? When we go to Webster next week, we'll have the self same message repeated, but we have a different facet. With Webster, the issue would be class fixity, the fact that we have difference in classes rather than race. Okay? And the one who is kind of playing this out would be the Duchess of Malfi, the sitting queen of the time, who goes down the ladder, goes down the hierarchy, and decides to get married to somebody who is way beneath her class. She gets married to Antonio, her steward, and again, she will not get away with it, I promise you. This is the white and the conservative society is saying. She will not get away with it, for all the good reasons that she might be citing, for all the good reasons that we see ourselves, how bad her brothers are, the corruption and everything. Still, she committed a grave crime, and she has to pay for it dearly, as we will see when we meet her next week, inshallah. Okay. So, what is it that we're dealing with today? We're dealing with chapter 2, and the title of chapter 2, as you may have seen, is Othello, Honesty and Difference, Men and Women. Okay. We have already touched on ideas from the chapter. There was this PowerPoint presentation that I had, but I thought it would be a good idea if we go to the book and skim through the chapter as given in the book, especially because it's not as long as the other chapters. Okay, so as you can see, the chapter starts with some kind of introduction about the idea of theme and what theme means. And I trust that you guys know what a theme is, right? Given the fact that you have done EL, for example, 121N, if you still remember, literary appreciation and critique. This is one of the courses. You have done also other courses. You have done plays and novels, and having themes is commonplace. So the theme or the themes are the ideas and the issues that any writer addresses himself to in his work of art. Okay, so and make no mistake about it. I mean, plays and novels are all about themes, about issues and topics and subject matter and messages. And I keep telling people that any work, no work is innocent. Um, no work is innocent means that there has to be a message of a sort. I mean, the writer is trying to communicate something to us. He has a number of messages and he's trying to get them across to us. Okay, so this is what I mean by by not having innocent works. Okay, there has to be a hidden agenda. Whether this agenda is positive or negative, perhaps this is the subject of another day. Okay, so do I make sense? Okay, so again, we're talking about the idea of theme as one of the crucial and important elements of any work. The other elements being characters, plot, setting, right? Style. So of all these elements, the theme stands out as the most important. Okay, so again, I'm stressing the fact that you cannot think of a work of art that does not have a theme or a number of themes, right? Spoke enough, and I think we have exhausted all, or we have exhausted speaking about all the themes there are in Othello, right? So what are those themes that we have been talking about? Again, class fixity, interracial relationships, established order, law and order, insecurities, right? The idea of tragedy as a concept, the concept of tragedy, whether Shakespearean or Elizabethan, right? Women, the idea of women and how women were treated at the time and after, right? Women issues and how they have always been discriminated against, right? Somebody's asking me to raise my voice. Yes. Can you hear it now? Okay. Fatma, can you hear can you hear it now? Hello. Okay. Fine. Let's cut to the chase, like they say, and go straight to. Okay, good. Alhamdulillah. And go to the issues. And obviously, the chapter starts with Act 2, and this is one of the headings that we have: a soldier's life. And the focus here is on domestic life, love life, because you cannot really separate between domesticity and love when it comes to a couple's relationship, when we have a man and his wife, or a woman and her husband, right? um, if you still remember, the last thing that we did in Act 1 was to hear the soliloquy of Iago. By now you're familiar with Iago, right? So this was the last note that we stopped at or on, and we got to know that there is going to be a shift or a change or a movement. Okay, we ended Act 1 in Venice. So is the movement going to be within Venice? No, it's outside Venice. We're moving from Venice. We're moving from civilized Venice to Cyprus. Okay, so Cyprus is another country or another city, but it is different from Venice, and it doesn't have the civil and the civilized qualities of Venice. It's a sea military post. It's an island where you have sea all over the place. And this is where the Venetians, okay, this is where the Venetians are going to uh, go. I mean, Venetian soldiers and leaders, military leaders. This is where they will defend their country. There is news of an impending Turkish danger. The Turks are going to attack Venice. Okay, so Venetians will go all the way to Cyprus so that they can stop the attack. So there is war coming up. Okay, so as you can see, if Venice stands for stability and civilization, Cyprus would stand for war, battles, and the sea. And the sea, as you can see, the sea, as you can see, and the sea, of course, is both great. We all admire and like the sea, but we also fear the sea. The sea is quite unpredictable, right? Can be stormy, can cause strong winds, it can destroy. Look at the ocean. Look at what happens in the U.S. every year. The U.S. and China. Thank God our countries, our part of the world is not. I mean, our seas and oceans are very calm and quiet. But look at what happens in the US and in other parts of the world, where the ocean and the seas are very dangerous. They can destroy whole cities and towns. Okay? So again, the sea can be a nice thing momentarily if you go if you go to the sea for a week or two, but if you have to live by the sea, obviously you will need to think twice. Anyway, so the sea in literature is a source of worry, is a source of unease. Hence the difference between Cyprus. So we're moving from peace and quiet to war and chaos and unbridled and uncontrolled things, whether on the level of human beings and their feelings and emotions, or whether on the level of nature itself. Okay, so where are we now? We are in Cyprus. Okay, what does Cyprus stand for? It stands for chaos, for unbridled and uncontrolled emotions, for battles and wars. It stands for the sea with its storms, with its unpredictability. Okay, so this is obviously a major shift in the play. Okay, suffice it to say that the rest of the action will be entirely in Cyprus. Okay, so all the bad stuff is going to happen in Cyprus, naturally enough. Okay, so it is important to notice that as we move on from Act 1, we also move in geographical setting. Again, from Venice to Cyprus. From a place symbolic of order and control, that is Venice, to a place of confusion and uncertainty, which is obviously Cyprus. So Venice and the Venetians represent Renaissance civilization and discipline. Okay, while Cyprus represents otherwise, or the opposite. So as soon as we arrive in Cyprus as audience, where the rest of the play is set, we sense that we have moved beyond the civilized and civilizing sway of Venice to a place where the forces of nature are less controlled. Okay, and this is, of course, is going to be the perfect environment, the perfect setting for the scheming and plotting of Iago, right? Okay, so we arrive in Cyprus only to know that the war has been avoided through a truce or a suspension of this war between the Turks and the Venetians. This is good news, like we said the other day, for everyone who would hate peace, who doesn't hate wars. Obviously everybody is happy except for a bunch of people. Who is this bunch of people? It's the soldiers, because wars and battles define soldiers. This is their occupation. If there is no war, there is no way they can justify their existence, if you like. And the problem is that they are not trained to walk out in life in civil society doing nothing. They are not trained to deal with civilians. Okay, this is a problem. Okay, and this is going to be a big problem for somebody like Othello. Othello is defined in the play by his military achievements. So if there is no war or battle to justify his uh, achievements, obviously we have a problem. Would he be able to switch gears and live like everybody else, a civil kind of life, go go to his wife and perhaps live a peaceful kind of life away from war? We doubt it very much. And what happens after proves that he cannot do that. So we'll have Desdemona will arrive first in Cyprus, along with Emilia. Emilia is her maid servant or her maid. And by the way, Emilia happens to be Iago's wife. And Othello will come later. And there is going to be this exchange and bantering where two people are talking to each other between Desdemona and Iago, in which Iago is going to exercise yet a number of, um, when he talks, I mean, his language is vulgar, obviously, and he doesn't hide it. They are engaged in talk about marriage and stuff. It is true that Desdemona is getting drawn to this area where she talks about love relationships, but she's not as explicit as Iago, of course, and her perspective is obviously not debased, not animalistic as that of Iago, of course. Again, they arrive, and then after a while, the news comes that there is no war. So the realization that there will, after all, be no threat from outside leaves everyone, including the audience, to focus on the domestic world of the love plot for the rest of the play. Okay? So the play now turns into a domestic tragedy or a domestic play where there is a great deal of talk about family and love and all these kinds of things. This shift in focus is neatly signaled by Othello's greeting to Desdemona when he lands. When he arrives, after she arrives, when she receives him, he says, "Oh, my fair warrior." Okay, so he's addressing a lady. Okay, and he's saying, fair is a measure and a function of city and civilian life, while warrior is a measure, excuse me, and a function of wars. فهي's combining the two. He cannot get rid yet of his biases towards wars, the fact that he is influenced by his career as a great soldier. And there is talk about the idea of power and who manipulates the power when it comes to love relationships. And it has always been the custom, and this is reflected in the poetry of the time and even before, that women had or have such a hold on men by account of the love that binds the two together. Um, there is going to be also uh, this is part of the exchange that we spoke about, that had Desdemona and Iago, and Cassio was around, and Iago started to kind of solicit his views on marriage, on women, on Desdemona herself. And Cassio was very reserved and even polite and decent. Whenever he talks about his leader's wife, he talks about her in very respectful terms. He says he refers to her as a most exquisite lady. See how polite he is. While Iago is referring to the fact that, I mean, he talks about brutal and sexual. I mean, the images that he uses are all replete with sexual allusions and bad stuff and animalistic stuff, if you like. We have a problem. The problem has to do with the fact that sometimes, because of the fact that Iago is all in the play, because of the fact that I mean, sometimes audiences identify with him. They like him for all his malignancy, for all his evil. Some people admire him. Okay, so this is a problem that we're going to have. He is very inventive in his evilness. It's evil that he is cooking and is coming up with, but sometimes you cannot help but admire his diligence, his hard work in effecting this evil, and making it materialize, making it possible, which is obviously a bad thing. So this is the problem that we're going to have. Some critics are saying that you can't speak of the play in isolation from Iago. They believe that Iago is even more important than Othello, and sometimes, like I said, he gets the admiration of members of the audience for perhaps the fact that he is very straightforward. He is very honest with himself, not with others, of course, and he's very frank, and he knows what he wants to do, and he gets for it or goes for it. Okay, so a simple fact about Act 2 is that for much of the time, Othello is absent from the stage. Who is occupying center stage? It's Iago, right? So if we have a balance, and this balance has been maintained in Act 1, okay, we don't have this balance anymore. Okay, the balance is shifting towards Iago. Again, Iago is, Iago's heavy presence is felt all through, especially in Act 2, while Othello is kept in the background. It is true that he is always the butt of talk. They talk about him more often than not, but he is most of the time hidden. I'm talking about Act 2, of course. When Othello first comes in, we notice how forceful and commanding he is. It is true. I mean, we cannot deny him those qualities. The fact that he is foreboding and he is outstanding. He is awe-inspiring. Once he is in, um, you get the feeling of a great man. We're not denying that. What we are referring to is that uh, for some reason he is hidden, and uh, while he is hidden, we have somebody else who is manipulating characters, is doing everything. Okay. Um, remember, this is all a build up to the great moment in Act 5 when Othello eventually kills his wife. So, as we're moving towards this moment, we start to collect impressions about everybody, including Othello. Okay, so one of the impressions that we get about Othello in Act 2, for example, when he arrives, would be that he gets angry easily. Um, whether this is because of where he comes from, hot countries, this is what they say, it can be a stereotype. Hot countries have their people hot blooded and they get angry and get excited and upset easily. Whether it's because of this or whether it is a flaw within his character, this is another issue. So what I'm trying to say is that we're gathering impressions about Othello, and towards or at the end of the play, we'll see whether the intuitions and impressions that we got about him, whether they will be confirmed or not. Again, I'm referring to one of the situations where Cassio is entangled in some kind of verbal exchange and a fight. Again, people need to know that Cassio is given to drinking, and when he gets drunk, he yani typical of people who are drunk, he loses control. So he obviously he lost control and started to do all kinds of bad stuff with other people, fighting with them. News about that went to Othello, who came, and he turned to Iago for a report, which is very ironic. Iago, honest Iago, what happened? It's this and that, it's this and that. Okay. But he got angry and upset. Very angry. Again, we're gathering impressions. We're trying to look at how Othello reacts, and as you can see, he reacts very violently, which can be some kind of an anticipation and foreshadow of what will he do next. So he is given a report by Iago. He goes to Cassio and tells him that you are no longer my lieutenant. I take off your promotion. And again, he was very angry. Again, this is one of the things that you need to think about. What I'm trying to say that he is perhaps overreacting. It's people fight all the time. Why would you strip the guy of his promotion, and then you get very angry and everybody notices. Where is the wisdom of the military leader? Right? This is what we keep asking, obviously. Are you getting the idea? Yes, yes. Hot-tempered and quick-tempered, like Abir is saying. Yes. So, as you can see, his impartiality is touched by passion, even rage, anger. The next line suggests he can be overtaken or ruled by his blood, his best judgment darkened or colored by passion. And this is very dangerous, right? You can always make the connections now that you have read the play. You know what he did in Act 5, of course. We're still in Act 2. So Othello immediately demotes his lieutenant, who goes on to bewail his loss of soldierly honor or reputation. Right away, he took off the promotion and he demoted him. This is overreaction. You didn't even open an investigation into who started it, right? Of course, Iago will take advantage of that, and he will tell, this is part of his grand scheme. He would tell Cassio to go to Desdemona and ask her to kind of talk to her husband and intervene on his behalf. And of course, you know what happens, and the handkerchief and stuff like that. And this is what we're. So our sympathies are being moved towards Othello and then away from him, but what we hear and see. We like Othello in Act 1 when he was also hidden and everybody spoke about him. We couldn't wait to see him, and when we saw him, he never let us down in terms of the grandeur, in terms of his music, in terms of how great he was when he appeared, right? And when we meet him again, and when he speaks in front of the Duke and defend his cause, he is fine. And then we see him here in Act 2 getting angry for, I wouldn't say no obvious reasons. There were reasons, but he was overreacting. So our admiration is fluctuating for him. Sometimes we get happy in his presence. We are so in love with him, and sometimes because of his deeds or misdeeds, we lose interest. Okay, the trick here would be that sometimes the admiration and the love that we have, even the respect that we have for Othello, can disappear because of what he does, and we our loyalties and our admiration may go to Iago himself. See, this is what is dangerous about it, because as you can see, Iago is hard working in his evil schemes. He spares no second in furthering his plan, to the extent that sometimes you as audience you feel that you are part of the plot that Iago is meting out or making. So many audiences find themselves enjoying Iago's energy and feel complicit in his plotting at this point. And again, they feel some kind of distance towards the character of Othello. They don't feel sympathetic towards him. They respect him, okay, but they don't feel sympathetic. When we go to Act 3, we have the temptation scene, and it's Act 3, Scene 3. And the temptation has to do with Iago tempting Othello into believing that something illicit is going on between Cassio and Desdemona. It's all through the insinuations that he was making and giving. Insinuations in the manner that I like not that. I like. What is it that you don't like? He doesn't say look at them. He says, he turns around and then says, I like not that. And the guy starts to think, right? So it's those insinuations, indirect as they are, that started this whole motion of jealousy. And we know what will happen at the end. So as you can see, the whole play is so intensely focused on Othello and Desdemona and Iago's plot to deceive and entrap them. Okay. There has been, down through the ages, as a matter of fact, a great deal of debate over what is happening in the play. Whether Othello is a victim of Iago, or whether he himself is to blame for what happened to him. What is the we have traditional scholarship, a set of critical studies, and they are traditional in the sense that they give us the traditional view of criticism when it comes to Othello, the play and the character. They normally talk about Othello as a victim. They believe that Iago has a diabolic nature, devilish nature, and it is all through the schemes and the evil plans of Iago. It is all through them that Othello, died tragically, or had the tragic downfall that we all have seen and read about. This is traditional scholarship, and this is headed by a number of scholars and critics. One of them happens to be A.C. Bradley, and the other is Wilson Knight. These critics are all for Othello as a victim, and they put the blame entirely on Iago. Okay, and they start to justify that, and they give examples from the play, and one of them refers, for example, to the speeches given by Othello, and he says that it's all music. He is noble, and he's everything. And the other is giving justifications even to the murder that Othello committed, and Othello for him is given, or is referred to as an honorable murderer. Can you imagine it? you have a murderer who is honorable. And he goes as far as saying that Othello's jealousy is justified because um, he's new to this idea of marriage. So killing somebody for this critic is okay. Okay, so the literary and the scholastic scene is going to get changed altogether with the appearance of a very famous critic by the name of Leavis. F.R. Leavis is of the opinion that Othello is a self-dramatizing individual, that he works hard to earn the pity and sympathies of other people, that he, in other words, he's not genuine. And he's also saying that the play is about Othello, and it's a tragedy that whose main character is Othello. So to say that Iago did it all, it means that we need to perhaps reconsider the title of the play. We need to reconsider the the position of Othello in the play, because he is no longer the hero uh, that we normally have in great tragedies. Leaver's ideas about Othello and his negative views of him and were also turning points. Ever since he said that, directors have been thinking of, they have had different visions. They started to kind of portray Othello in a different light. The characters on the stage do not reflect the traditional view of Othello as a victim. No, not anymore. It's all because of Leavis and what he said about Othello, undermining the character of Othello, undermining his nobility, and saying that he is more or less a fake individual who is after earning people's sympathies and pity. So, like we said, A.C. Bradley wrote a very famous critical study on Othello, and it's called Shakespearean Tragedy. This was in 1904, and he saw Othello as open and passionate, as a lover, the strength of whose passion inspired the love not only of Desdemona but the audience, who were swayed by his grandiloquence and pitied him when he fell, despite his murder of his wife. This is what he is saying. See, can you imagine? He believes that Othello is passionate, is open, and the strength of his passion is big enough, is so inspiring that you would make you as a member of the audience overlook the fact that he is a murderer. You focus on his passion and his openness, on the strength of his passion, and you totally ignore and overlook the fact that this guy has killed his wife. And he would say in justification that He was jealous, and jealousy is credible and justifiable in his case because this was new to him. See, of course, this is something that other critics are going to take aim at, like T.S. Eliot, for example. T.S. Eliot says, no, this is not acceptable. Othello has a tendency to self-dramatize. Self-dramatize, it means that he can create a whole scene of tragedy in order for people, and he starts to make speeches, big speeches, in order for people to say, yeah, hi, this is excellent. This guy is a hero. Okay, but this is how T.S. Eliot sees Othello. Okay, so we are still with Leaves' opinion, along with that of T.S. Eliot. They have negative opinions of and about Othello. And the importance of the Leaves' view is that it challenges us to think about how we understand the role of Othello and the play as a tragedy in particular. Again, if he is that much of a victim, he should leave his place as a tragic hero and go somewhere else, be another character. Right? He cannot be that easy victim given the fact that he's a military leader, he is not young, right? If people insist that he is a victim, the whole fabric of the tragedy should collapse, according to Lewis. So how far what happens is the product of the hero's nobility being brought low by the devilish machinations of Young. This is what they say. This is what Bradley and Wilson Knight and other traditional critics are saying. That we are in front of a hero, a noble hero, and this noble hero is brought low by the devilish machinations and schemings of Iago. Again, the opposing and the corresponding question or statement would be whether Othello is perhaps unwittingly responsible for his downfall, for the tragedy. So is it wittingly? He is wittingly responsible. Wittingly, it means that he knows what he is doing. He knows that it will take him to this corner or that one. Or unwittingly. Unwittingly means that he didn't mean it. This is also one of the questions that critics pose and ask. So as you can see, well, it depends. Like I said, these are all opinions and interpretations, and everyone can come up with his own interpretation, including us. We can have our own interpretation of events and how we see Othello. Okay, so traditional criticism sees Othello again and sees the tragedy, sees it as the undoing of the noble more by the devilish cunning of Iago. Okay, so you have a noble individual who is brought low, who kind of falls down through the cunning and the evil doing of Iago. This is how they see it. So as you can see, it's external evil. What Bradley and Wilson, A.C. Bradley and Wilson Knight are saying is that it is external evil. It has nothing to do with Othello himself. Okay? So what is this external evil? It's the malice of the demi-devil that turned a happy story of romantic love into a tragedy. It's through the malice and the envy and the evil tactics of Iago that we have a romantic love turning into a tragedy. This is the traditional view of the play. However, this is a sentimentalization of the tragedy according to Lewis, and this is not acceptable. Because the shift, and there is going to be a shift in the tragedy now. So we're moving from Othello to Iago. And Lewis is telling people that you're losing sight of the fact that it is the tragedy is of Othello and about Othello. Othello is the chief character. So he says that you guys are ignoring that or overlooking that. So the play is Othello's character in action. For to come and say that Iago did everything and Othello was a victim, so the whole fabric, if you insist on saying that, the whole fabric of the tragedy will crumble. Okay? So again, Lewis insists on the idea that Othello is into the habit of self-approving, self-dramatization. And this is part of his makeup, this is part of his character and personality. He goes on to say, I'm talking about Lewis, of course, and he's saying that somehow Othello is displaying readiness to what is happening. He is making it possible, in other words, by being self-dramatizing, by making speeches out of whatever catastrophe or calamity hitting him. This brings us to the idea of insecurities, and we spoke about yes, Maha is saying that, yeah, yes, absolutely, Maha, yes. According to Lewis, yes, he seeks recognition and he's trying to attract attention. Not narcissism, but sometimes, if you're seeking, not all those who try to seek attention are narcissists. Sometimes you seek recognition because at one point you were not given this recognition, perhaps when you were a kid or something. It's a kind of insecurity among others. So again, all this talk about the character of Othello and the negative references that Lewis is making would bring up the idea of insecurities. The internal factors that we spoke about. Of course, there were external factors that were kind of responsible for the downfall of the couple. like the established order that they were fighting. Uh, Remember the fact that they were not accepted or recognized because of this interracial marriage that they had. There are also internal factors, and those internal factors are otherwise otherwise referred to in classical tragedy as flaws within the character of the tragic hero. So what are those insecurities that we had? Remember when we spoke about the fact that he is an outsider, that he is black in a sea of white people, that he is way older than his wife, and he would think, why in the world would she get married to me? I am way older, I'm not handsome, I'm an outsider. These are all insecurities that could have fed his jealousy and could have prompted him to act the way he did. So again, who is responsible? Is it Othello or Iago? So if we say that Othello is partly responsible, we have to kind of probe deep into the character of Othello and see why he did that. Again, by doing that, we're addressing his insecurities, and his insecurities have been, uh, um, debated for quite some time. Okay, so those insecurities will pave the way for Iago. Those insecurities are going to help Iago achieve his goals. So Shakespeare suggests that it is Othello's own insecurity that gives Iago the opportunity to work on his feelings. And what are these insecurities? He is the outsider. He is an outsider. The extravagant and wheeling stranger. يبقى outsider, stranger in this community of Venetians. And he is portrayed as always as homeless and uprooted. He is not, whether he is not doing enough or the community is denying him that, he is forever unable to be naturalized. He's ethnically different. And again, you would look at the ideas at the time as promoted by Parapancio and Rodrigo in the play. The fact that the marriage between a black African and a white Venetian is deeply unnatural. And he knows about that. Othello knows deep down that this is the case, that this is an insecurity that he was fighting, but he couldn't. This is psychological. Remember that Parapancio did not believe when they told him that his daughter got married to Othello. And he said, no, she can't be in her own right mind. Something is wrong. Othello has practiced magic and witchcraft on her. See? One of the insecurities would be the fact that he's middle-aged or even above, and she is very young. Also, one of his insecurities have to do with the fact that he is quite unaccustomed to the company of women. He doesn't know how to deal with them. Again, because he is given to battles and wars. Yes. The This idea of yeah, like I don't know who is this. Maha Fadl has raised a very important issue. The fact that he doesn't trust women. He is a misogynist. Misogynist is a woman hater. He is a misogynist, but he doesn't. But he hides it, obviously, like the other male characters, Iago. And a misogynist never trusts women. And what perhaps confirmed or fed his misogyny was the fact that she eloped with him, she ran away with him. And he still remember what Parapansio says. Parapansio at one point says, if she did that with her father, she might as well do it with you. Take care. And he is obviously trying to keep his guard up. This is another insecurity. I mean, so the prospect that she may betray him like she did with his father is always there in front of his eyes. Did deceive her father, marrying you, and when she seemed to shake and fear your look, she loved me most. He echoes Parapansio's warning at the end of Act 1. Again, this idea of misogyny is not exclusive or limited to Othello. All the other characters look at women as mere, mere things, property and possessions to dispense with, uh, as Parapansio is saying. Uh, I mean, sexual objects in the words and the actions of Iago, for example. So they are not taken very seriously. And here, at the least provocation, Othello kills his own wife. He doesn't give her the benefit of the doubt. He kills her for something as petty as a handkerchief. He didn't try to confirm or double check, which means that he has those, like I said, he is ready to mistrust her. He doesn't trust her in the first place because she is a member of the female species that he is against. So Shakespeare makes it clear how much the hero resembles Iago and the other male Venetians in his masculine pride and suspicious distrust of women. So the question remains, is the deception of Othello as a matter of Iago's manipulation of his fears and insecurities, and thus on one level it represents some emanation of Othello's unconscious, or is Iago after all a diabolic intellect, a consummate Machiavel or villain? Let me ask you, what do you think, you yourself? On whose side are you standing? Do you believe that Iago is diabolic and cunning, and it was all because of him that we that he, I mean Desdemona and Othello fell down at the end, or is it or is it that Othello is to blame for that? What do you think? By the way, the mic is enabled. If you would like to come to the mic and say something, you're more than welcome. um, Julia promised us to try last time. If she's around, we're 24 today, and perhaps she's not around. um, Marwa Gandour is saying Othello is noble and Iago is the one who led Othello to his downfall. Maha is saying, yeah, both. Julia says it was because of Iago's hatred and Othello's, I don't know what. Julia, it was because of Iago's hatred and Othello's insecurities. However, Othello is less to blame. Okay. Okay. So again, the focus, as you can see this time around, is what is new in Shakespeare's criticism, and scholarship. And what is new is that we're reading the play from a different angle of vision, from or by or through the eyes of 20th century and 21st century critics and 21st century people. Um, F.R. Leaves is, of course, a 20th century critic. And what he's, we can almost echo what he is saying. We don't take old criticism for granted anymore. It's not because Bradley is a big scholar that we have to accept what he says. Okay, we need to challenge even old existing criticism. And this is what F.R. Leaves did. He challenged the old idea, that says that Othello is noble, is blameless, and it's all Iago's cunning and evil schemes. No, he says no. It's more complicated than that. Okay. For him, he doesn't see Othello as a heroic figure. He sees him as a flawed and egotistical character or individual. And we shift gears and move to something else, which has to do with women characters in the play. And of course, if we talk about women, we talk about Desdemona and we talk about Emilia. And in one of the scenes in Act 4, this is scene 3, and it's normally referred to as the Willow Song scene. This is all about women and women's reaction to their male counterparts in love and otherwise. I did some research about and on the word willow. Okay, in order to see how related, I mean, the song, how related the Willow song is to what is taking place. Apart from the fact that it was a song sung by one of the maids. I try to, I keep telling people that whenever you have titles, you have to unpack the title and you have to think of and uncover the significance of titles and headings, because they are not put there haphazardly or randomly. And my research about the word value took me to areas that are very relatable to what we're doing. I noticed that the word value is obviously a tree. It's a kind of tree. Okay? And it looks nice and everything. When I did further research, I found that um, it's not because of the willow. I mean, the willow tree is not meant in and for itself. The willow tree is meant here when there is rain, because when there is rain and it is raining heavily, water drips down from the branches of this willow tree, and it gives you the impression that somebody is weeping, somebody is crying. Okay, so when you take the idea of crying, or the weeping rains dripping out of this willow tree, and you go to the scene, uh, things clear out. So let's go back to the whole thing. It's a willow song. Where are we? We are obviously in the bedroom of Desdemona. She is getting ready for bed, and Emilia is helping her, perhaps undress or something. Um, and Desdemona started to sing, and the song that she was singing is called the Willow Song, and it's a song that she came to know about it to know about through her mom. Her mom had a servant or a maidservant by the name of Barbary, and Barbary is an African name. Hence, the idea that this maidservant may have been black. So the song is simply about, I think, Barbary. Barbary was in love with a guy. He turned mad, he became crazy and lost interest in her. She kept weeping and crying until she died. So this is so Desdemona is singing this song. You can almost tell that this is some kind of foreshadowing, or an anticipation of what she is in for. Remember, in Act 5, she will be killed. So while singing, and the intervals perhaps between the lines that she was singing, she engaged in talk with Emilia about what's happening, and the idea of betrayal, and whether Emilia would betray her husband for the world. And through this engagement in conversation, we get to know about the character of Desdemona and the character of Emilia. Desdemona is not responsive, or is not reacting to what her husband is doing. He's started obviously accusing her of being uh, uh, not very faithful and stuff like that. and she doesn't react, and she says, leave him. And Emilia is saying, no, you shouldn't. And Emilia started to also show signs of practicality, the fact that she is a woman of the world. She's not sheltered and spoiled like Desdemona. So her judgment is practical. She is self-assertive. She says, no, we have to stand up to men. They have to know what we stand for, that we shouldn't be taken for granted anymore. Okay? So through this scene and through the Willow song scene, we get to know more about Emilia. And if we compare the two, Desdemona loses because she's very, you know, helpless. She doesn't react. She's very submissive, and she's ready to die. And this is ironic and very strange, because if you compare the Desdemona of the first act and the Desdemona of now, obviously it's a world of difference. Remember, when we first met her, we got to know that she defied the entire world, and she went against the dictates and the conventions of her society and got married to somebody from another race. She was this was daring, and this was very challenging and courageous. She has defied the entire world for the love she had for Othello. But now she's very submissive. She's ready to die, not defending herself. On the other hand, we have Emilia, who is a practical lady, who is a woman of the world, very self-assertive, and she is even defending women, and is trying to claim their rights back. See? So the song expresses female despair and longing and passive acceptance towards the lover. Let nobody blame him, his scorn I approve. See how submissive Desdemona is? Is this the Desdemona who could resist her father's pleas, marry in secret, and depart from her home city for a foreign shore? Is this the one? So love and marriage for Emilia are matters of everyday reality. She's practical. Desdemona, on the other hand, is out of touch with reality, very sheltered and very spoiled. That's mere passiveness that we're getting if we only have Desdemona. The inclusion of Emilia's assertive counterpoint, with the inclusion of Emilia's assertive counterpoint, the scene or the whole thing becomes one which struggles with female and male responsibility and its limitations and negotiations. So Emilia's speech expanded the angle of vision through which we can have access to the female characters or to the female folks in the play. One last point about this chapter and about this play would have to do with the idea of difference. So the wheel comes full circle. Actually, this is what we have been talking about all through. Difference in the sense that we're having different characters. on top of them would be Othello, for example. And this is, by the way, is typical of Shakespeare. With Shakespeare, you have all types of different characters. And by different characters, I mean they are not mainstream. Mainstream characters would be white, Christian, European, what else? Green, green or blue-eyed, right? If we're talking about women, they are pretty much the same, and they have to be fair and blonde and all these kinds of things. But this is the mainstream. So to have Othello is obviously not mainstream. To have Shylock in The Merchant of Venice, this is obviously not a mainstream, because he's not even Christian, he is Jewish, right? To have who else? I mean, we have many Italians in lots of plays. Okay, we have Indians. We have here Othello is referred to as at one point as a heathen, yeah, as a Muslim, non-Christian. So this is no new to obviously to Shakespeare. And even women characters. I mean, women, if they are given a role, a big role, this is obviously also a sign of difference, because women were not thought highly of at the time. And there is going to be a great deal of talk about the idea that the more open Europeans were to the world, and the more knowledge they acquire about other species and other races, the more superior they feel. So instead of teaching them, knowing about the other races and other species, they perhaps learn to tolerate and be tolerant and everything. No, it doesn't happen with them. They feel more superior and stuff, and they stick to their race, and they consider themselves as more superior than anybody else. And this is basically what the chapter is about. We're done with Shakespeare. No, yeah, we're done with Shakespeare, and we're done with Othello. It has taken us like 3 classes so far, including the introduction to the age and everything. Next time we'll do another English writer by the name of Webster. I would like you to wrap up, your notes on Othello and Shakespeare, so that you can get ready for the Duchess of Malfi by Webster. If you have time, I would like you to read the play. It's an interesting one, and it is also relatable, because the central character is a woman like you. Somebody's wait. Could you please give us the link of the ebook if you have? What ebook? I have copies of the chapters. I have a copy of this chapter. If you would like me to post it on LMS, I can do that. I have a copy of the previous chapter. If you also would like me to post it or share it with you, that's okay. I also have audio versions of some of the chapters. I sent you one on LMS, and judging from the views, you didn't access it, or you didn't know that it existed. Have you seen that? I think it was chapter on impediments to love. This is an audio version. Yes. Try to access it, and like I promised, I'll send you, or I'll share with you the versions I have, the copies that I have of the chapters. Okay. Yes, of course. Yeah, Emilia is very important as a female character. Um, yeah, it's a long story. You need to read the chapters. You need to watch the record and the different recordings that we made together, and then you come up with an assessment. Okay. Type on this note, and with this item we come to the end of today's class. Have a pleasant evening. Assalamu alaikum everyone.